What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York. It's been quite a minute, but we are finally back, and it's good to be back. We are here with Chris Enriquez of Light Tower, as well as Primitive Weapons, Spotlights, On the Might of Princes, and 20 other bands that I just can't name at the moment, but it's great to see you again,
I love you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you back here, and thank you for giving us more new music during these times. This Light Tower EP is just extraordinary and has really expressed even more sides of you that I haven't seen in other projects. What was the sort of like thought process going into it? Being that this is a solo endeavor, did it feel like that you had more creative freedom than you've ever had as opposed to your other projects?
Yeah, I mean, I was stuck in my house for a while, like everybody else, and I was very trapped, like everyone else was too, right? And I've always had songs and all that, but I never sang or wrote lyrics until the pandemic allowed me the time to kind of gather my thoughts and also just learn how to self-record. So I would record a song or two and it'd start out pretty rough, but I would sort of listen back to what I was doing, and that really gave me the opportunity to get comfortable with myself. But it was something I always wanted to do. I just probably wouldn't have done it, though, if we weren't in a pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you definitely used these times productively and allowed you to sort of find yourself. Was it almost kind of like, you know, during all these times of uncertainty that just the inspiration struck and you knew how it wanted to sound like? Because you've played with many different genres, from metal to punk to hardcore, and now this Light Tower is something that's relatively more soft and, you know, like more ambient in a way. Did this was the sound that resonated with you at that time?
I think that I was sort of spending a lot of time to myself, and I think everything sort of just congealed throughout everything I've ever done musically on this, because like I've been through a lot of different types of music, but all of it still is dark, and I think has some sort of I don't know if I should say heavy, but darkness is probably like the best word, I would think. I know it sounds cliche, but so, you know, there's a little bit of everything throughout my life that I think comes out on this, whether it's like, you know, a tinge of my earlier bands to the bands I'm in now. But it's all part of me, you know what I mean? So it wasn't on purpose, I guess. It was just sort of like what came out because I had so much time to reflect. Yeah. And when I pick up a guitar and start singing or writing any type of music, it inherently kind of just, I realized, ends up sounding like a culmination of everything I've been through, like, and every band I think I've ever been in sort of comes out in one way or another somehow through this project.
And, you know, it's very autobiographical, and, you know, like, with, you know, Primitive Weapons and Spotlights and all the bands I've seen you play and talk about before, like, I could tell that you're into it and that there's a deep connection with it, but do you feel that with Light Tower, if somebody wants to get to know who Chris Enriquez is and wants to know about your life, Light Tower is sort of like the best sort of representation for who you personally are?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to not think that, because it really just is. It is who I am. I don't really know how to sing like anyone else, and it's not like even like I try to sound the way that it sounds. You know, I know people do that, and that's sort of probably like imitation has spawned so many different genres and subgenres. I just don't know how to do that. So what was interesting to me is just sort of like recognizing that, like, this is just what comes out. So it's just an honest reflection, I think. And lyrically, because I've never done that before, I'm just singing about things that I've gone through. So there's nothing too profound, I would say, about the idea of what I'm doing has been done a million times, but it's more personal for me because I've never had the opportunity to sing about, you know, things that have happened to me, or just my feelings in general, never really out like this, you know, playing drums usually.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because all the previous times I've interviewed you for other projects, I was talking about, you know, how you come up with drum parts or guitar parts and stuff, but I never got to ask you about lyrics until now. And like, do you feel that, why do you feel that almost kind of like this style of music and the lyrics that you're singing about, why do you feel like they sort of go hand in hand in a way? Like, do you think that have the lyrics determine the music itself, or did you think of the lyrics more after you had like song arrangements already there?
Well, I think the best way to answer that is, like, you know, I definitely write music first. And I think when I write music and when I play music in any band, for some reason, it usually is channeling either something of it's usually something negative, and like some sort of anger or frustration, or again, I know this all sounds cliche, but that's just sort of like the school that I came from. All the music that I came up on, whether it was depressing or angry, all still was coming from like some weird dark negative space, but kind of exercising music to kind of like vent, I guess. So that's really the music. I write it first, and it usually kind of conveys a certain vibe or feeling, and I think that the way I just described it sort of allows me to kind of pick and choose my topics as I go, but they're all still about something shitty or something frustrating. And I don't know, maybe I'll write something one day that I'm happy about, but that I don't know if that answers your question.
It definitely does. And I mean, who cares what it's about? I feel like, when we write about darkness, it's very cathartic, and therefore I think the results are what is the happy part of all of those songs. Do you feel that with this style that you're exploring on your solo endeavor, like being that this is an EP, the Light Tower EP, is this going to be a good representation of what maybe more solo songs are going to sound like, or what maybe a full-length album would sound like?
I think that like right now, because I have a collection of songs that were all written at the same time, that they all probably have a similar vibe to them. But I also have an interest in sort of doing other types of things, like I'm dabbling in some more electronic aspects of music with some collaborative efforts that I'm trying to work on with friends, as well as some even mellower stuff, maybe with just piano and vocals. And I know you and I were just talking about how me and you should try that sometime. But I like how like David Bowie reinvented himself, and I'm not going to be wearing face paint or doing anything like Ziggy Stardust or anything, but it's really cool to sort of look at him as an inspiration because of the fact that like he did reinvent himself, but everything he did was really cool and had integrity to it, and it was artistically adventurous. So I think that as I go, I don't know where it goes. I'm just sort of like maybe I will put something out that's more electronic based with more keys, and maybe I'll do something where it's just me with the piano and a cello. So it could really be anything. I don't know. It's kind of like however I feel at the moment. But right now, this is kind of like what came out of me is what's on this EP.
What's funny is a lot of people who I've noticed who were involved in the hardcore scene and the punk scene are like working on solo endeavors that kind of express a more personal and maybe even a more sensitive side. I think another great example would be John LaMacchia. He plays in Candiria, and his solo work really expresses, a great singer sort of songwriter. This may be kind of a funny, like a funny question to add, but if you're going to show your hardcore peers, the people who you were throwing down in the pit with at CBGB's, and they're listening to your Total Meltdown project, and then they hear this, how do you think they're going to react?
I don't know. It's a tough thing to jump from one thing to another. I mean, especially for John, who I manage, by the way. I'm so proud of him because he is such a visionary, and I just want to say that, like, I know that he's worked so hard. And Candiria, they were so ahead of their time, but never really got their due. And John's doing his solo project, and it's like you said, it's more somber. It's got even elements of new wave, and it's weird. I mean, for me, I don't think I have so much of a jump. I mean, Total Meltdown is a jump from what I've been known for, but On the Mighty Prince has had acoustic songs, and so has Gracer. So, like, for me, I think it's not so different from what people have heard me do. Except I'm up front instead of in the back. But hardcore, man, like I'm going to a hardcore show later on today. I'm hardcore for life, but I like music, and I just like songwriting, and it's not about one style or another. So I just like to mix everything up, and this is sort of like what my version of everything mixed up is. You know, I have some parts that I've probably ripped off, you know, some of the hardcore bands that I grew up on in the song Drown in Sleep. But then it's like, it goes into this like beautiful singing part, and people probably wouldn't hear that and think hardcore, but you know, it's in there.
Yeah, I've always said that with a lot of the bands that you're in, whether it's Spotlights or Gracer on the Might of Princess and even the soul work, it's music to show that hardcore kids have a sensitive side too. Like you're expressing the sensitive side that many hardcore kids may be afraid to express in a way.
I think that everybody's got like their own method of self-expression. I can only speak for myself, but I've always sort of worn my heart on my sleeve, and it's very scary because again, I'm not used to. I'm about to play my first show, and I never got up in front of a crowd with a microphone, and you know, I don't know if I want to talk or if I want to just play and get off stage. So it's like it's a total trip for me. It really is. But I know what you mean. It is funny. We're in a place where, you know, the toughest of the tough are here, and I know all those guys, and I love them, and then I am coming out with this sort of melodic effort, I guess you could say, and I hope people dig it. You know,
I think
we'll see what happens.
I've noticed that there's been a greater appreciation, like with the Turnstile album. You know how you see like there's some more softer, slower songs in there, and every big hardcore album from Code Orange or Loathe or Vane or whatever have all had like their soft sort of shoegaze sort of sides behind it. So I feel like maybe your style is almost kind of like emphasizing on that and really kind of like going down another rabbit hole, which I think is going to be a great thing for music.
Thanks, man. I love where music is today for upcoming rock bands and just sort of how there's so much out there. Like you just mentioned Code Orange and Turnstile, but you know, there's also there's so many bands. Like I just saw Touche Amore, and they had Military Gun open the show, and they were great, and I just checked out this band Scowl the other day.
Oh, they're amazing.
They're fantastic, and like I'm just so excited that there's like Gleamer is another band that I love who Spotlights took out.
I love Gleamer.
There's just like so much great shit. Oh, and Great Death is a band that my girlfriend made me see, and they blew my mind. Like there's so much happening today, and it resonates with me because it reminds me of where I came from, and I couldn't be happier with like the future of rock. I know it sounds super cheesy, but I really am feeling like we're in a very good time for our scene right now.
And leading up to the pandemic, you know, like I was, you know, I've seen you play with every band from like 2016 when I first met you to like now, and you know, the world has changed, and you know, like with the pandemic and how it inspired Light Tower and all that. But not only have you played with a lot of bands, but working in this industry and interacting with so many people, and you know, going to all these different events and hearing all these stories. Has working in the music industry, you know, working both behind the scenes and in front, has that also maybe opened your perspective on how you write as well?
I don't know if it has opened up my perspective on how I write, because everything I've ever done has been so separate from the music that I have to professionally promote. You know, you've seen me at so many types of shows over the years, and that part of my life is really my job. And sure, I love some of the bands that I got to see, but I do really try to keep it separate. If anything, if there's any relation whatsoever to my day job, I think that I've realized that what I'm doing has a place in it all, because it seems like younger people and even people my age are appreciating music from a certain time period in 2022 that it just so happens to be that that's the kind of music that I make. So that feels good to recognize and be like, oh, people might like this because that's sort of, you know, in the now randomly. I never thought that any of this music would be popular in 2022. So it's a fortunate thing to be like, I can do that. I don't even have to think about it.
Damn right. Damn right.
Yeah.
Your first instinct is always the best instinct.
My first instinct is just, you know, like if I play music, it's going to sound like it's from the 90s. I can't do anything about it. And so I'm digging the Renaissance, you know, like even when I was trying to do different things over the past, let's say, 20 years, it just always came out sounding like it was from that time period because that's where I'm from.
Yeah, fair enough. And you mentioned that like some of the lyrical subject matter in Light Tower, some of it is personal and from a dark spot. I've always, as somebody who does use darkness as a source and despair as a source of inspiration, some artists do become like I feel iffy about using the term, but I'll just say become like victims of their own product in a way. Do you feel that when you're using darkness or personal tragedy or experiences that sometimes makes the artistic process a little bit deteriorating, or
I think that it's different for everybody. I think that for me, I purposely use music and other types of things like martial arts or these sorts of things. To me, the purpose of being a part of it is to keep it healthy, right? So if I didn't do that, I think that I would probably be losing my mind and I would be dealing with some deep mental health issues. But the reason why I put it through that sort of ringer of art, or physical movement is because it helps. I know myself, and I know that's what I have to do to exercise what I'm thinking inside my brain, so that I don't go crazy.
And circling back to all the projects, you almost feel like not only do you play in different bands with different styles, but you're playing different instruments too.
Yeah.
Do you almost feel like you are like portraying different sides of who you personally are depending on the instrumentation and the band itself?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but what's also sort of funny about it is like, yes, of course, because I play bass and guitar and drums and I'm singing on everything with the help of my friend Justin, who was in Gracer, who was actually playing the keys. So he was the only other person that performed on the EP. But yeah, I mean, my style of playing each of those instruments is coming out and showing a side of me. But one thing that's sort of funny is that like it's not very technical, and I know that's not your question, but like it's very much like pop songwriting in the sense of like, I know this song has a verse, chorus, and a verse, chorus, and I'm just going to play the drum part that belongs there. And I did it on the spot. I never sat, like everything I did was kind of like on the spot. Because songwriting in the sense that I'm talking about, I think is supposed to be quite fundamental. It's not about, the technicality of it. When I'm listening to Nirvana or even Beatles, it's very kind of just like, get on with it and just fucking serve the song, So
I couldn't agree with you more.
That's kind of what I tried to do on this, without even trying, really,
I mean, look at Tom Petty's "Free Falling." That's 3 chords, and it's one of the greatest songs of all time.
Exactly. So. I mean, it's just it's a great song.
Yeah, exactly.
And it gets the message across.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And the final question I wanted to ask you is because, doing a solo endeavor, let alone in a time of isolation and uncertainty that we've been in, it's always a learning experience. It makes you discover new things about yourself. Can you see yourself, do you think that maybe Light Tower unlocked more doors for what you could bring into Total Meltdown or Spotlights or any project that you've involved yourself in?
Yeah, I mean, I am actually helping write the next Spotlights record, which I've never written a thing in Spotlights in my life. Maybe just to the effect of like making sure that Mario might like a drum part, or Phil might be like the extent of what I've contributed to the creative aspect of being in that band. But now I'm actually writing with them and giving them sort of like some of my ideas. But of course, it's they're in charge of the band, so they're hearing me out, and if they like it, they're running with it or incorporating it into their world. But so yeah, I mean, in a way, I would say not because of Light Tower, but it just so happens that that I think my bandmates are recognizing that I might have something to offer on the creative side as well, as opposed to just being a hired gun.
Fair enough. But yeah, and I look forward to the rest of the world hearing what you've explored with Light Tower. It's an extraordinary EP. Thank you so much, Chris. Always great to talk to you again.
Thank you so
First interview in a while, and I think we started it off on a high note. We'll see you next time on Heavy New York, everybody. Chris Enriquez of Light Tower.